The horse came out of the storm like a ghost, her cry cutting through the wind in a way that froze Bianca Spears where she stood. It was not a normal sound. It was fear, pain, and urgency all mixed together, carried on the roar of a Montana blizzard. Bianca knew right then that something was terribly wrong. Bianca stood at the kitchen window of her ranch house, watching the sky turn from dull gray to a sick green-black that every rancher feared. The wind screamed across the open land, slamming into the house as if trying to tear it apart. Snow had started falling fast, thick and sharp, already hiding the fence lines and trails she knew by heart. In Montana, storms like this killed people. They came fast, trapped you, and gave no second chances. She had spent the whole afternoon getting ready. All 18 of her horses were locked safely in the barn. The water barrels were full. Firewood was stacked high on the porch. Every loose tool was tied down. Bianca had lived her whole life on this land, and she knew how to prepare. But even with all that, she felt uneasy. This storm felt different. At 36 years old, Bianca ran Mountain View Ranch alone. It had been in her family for 3 generations. Her father had died 2 years earlier, and her fiancé, Lloyd, had been killed in a trucking accident not long after. Her brother lived far away in California. Her sister was in Chicago. That left Bianca alone on thousands of acres of cold, beautiful land. She loved the land. She loved the horses. What she hated was the silence. Some days she spoke to no one at all. After Lloyd's death, the loneliness settled into her bones like winter cold. The wind shook the windows hard. Bianca pulled on her coat and scarf and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit her like a punch. Snow blew sideways, stinging her face. She leaned into the wind and made her way toward the barn, her boots crunching through fresh snow. Inside the barn, it was warmer. The horses shifted in their stalls, restless and alert. Animals always knew when danger was close. Bianca moved from stall to stall, checking hay and water, speaking softly. Her best horse, a buckskin stallion named Maverick, watched her closely. She had raised him herself. He was strong, calm, and smart. In many ways, he was her closest companion. That was when she heard it. A sharp, desperate whinny came from outside the barn. Bianca froze. The sound came again, louder this time. This was not one of her horses. She ran to the barn door and pulled it open. Snow and wind rushed inside. Through the white blur, she saw a horse standing in her driveway. The mare was chestnut-colored, her coat soaked with sweat despite the freezing air. Foam covered her chest. Her legs shook so badly Bianca thought she might collapse. She wore a halter, and her eyes were wide with fear. The mare cried out again, a sound full of panic. Bianca did not think. She grabbed a lead rope and fought her way toward the horse. The wind tried to push her back, but she kept going. "It's okay," Bianca said loudly. "You're safe." The mare did not run. She stood there, breathing hard, as if she had used the last of her strength just to reach this place. Bianca clipped the rope to the halter and led her into the barn. The horse followed without resistance, still tossing her head as if trying to say something important. Once the barn door was shut, Bianca looked the mare over. This was no stray. The horse was well-fed, well-trained, and clearly loved. Someone owned her. Someone depended on her. That was when Bianca noticed it. Taped carefully to the mare's tail was a small waterproof pouch. Bianca's heart started racing. With cold fingers, she peeled away the tape and opened the pouch. Inside was a folded piece of paper. The writing was shaky. "My name is Eve Warner. I live at the old Mackenzie place, 10 miles north on Timber Ridge Road. I am having a heart attack. I am alone. Phone lines are down. Cell phone has no signal. I sent my horse because she knows the way to your ranch. Please help me. I don't want to die alone." Bianca checked the time on her watch. More than an hour had passed since the note was written. Her hands trembled. She tried her phone. No service. She ran to the house and tried the landline. Dead. Outside, the storm was getting worse. Every smart thought told her to stay. 10 miles in this weather could mean death. People disappeared in storms like this. and were found frozen days later. Bianca looked at the exhausted mare standing in her barn. This horse had run through a deadly storm to save her owner. Bianca folded the note and took a deep breath. She knew what she had to do. She would go. Bianca moved fast, pushing fear aside. She saddled Maverick with steady hands, choosing her heaviest saddle for balance. She dressed in layers until she could barely move, packed blankets, food, flares, rope, and her first aid kit into the saddlebags. She left a note on her table in case anyone came looking. Then she led both horses out into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet. Snow flew sideways, burning her skin. She tied the chestnut mare's lead rope to her saddle horn. The mare pulled forward, hard, desperate, certain of where she needed to go. Bianca mounted Maverick and let the mare lead. Within minutes, her ranch vanished behind them. The world became white and loud. Wind howled like something alive. Snow erased all sense of direction. Bianca could not see more than a few feet ahead. She trusted the mare completely. This horse knew the way. Bianca felt it in the strong pull on the rope and the steady determination in the mare's movement. Time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours. The cold crept into Bianca's fingers and toes, then deeper into her thoughts. She focused on small things. Breathe. Stay upright, keep moving. They crossed frozen ground where Bianca could not tell if it was pasture or creek. Maverick placed each step carefully, his strength and calm keeping her steady. Several times the wind shoved them sideways, and Bianca felt fear grip her chest. One fall could end everything. The mare never hesitated. She lowered her head and pushed forward, fighting the storm with everything she had left. Bianca knew then that this horse was not just running home. She was on a mission. At last, through the blowing snow, a dark shape appeared. Buildings. The old Mackenzie place. Relief nearly made Bianca cry. The mare broke into a stumbling trot and stopped at the house, calling out. Bianca slid from the saddle, her legs shaking badly. She tied both horses to the porch rail and ran to the door, pounding with numb fists. No answer. She forced the door and rushed inside, calling Eve's name. The house was cold and dark. She found Eve on the floor near the fireplace, pale and barely conscious. A bottle of aspirin lay nearby. I came, Bianca said, kneeling beside her. I'm here. Eve's eyes opened slightly. You came, she whispered. Bianca worked quickly, giving her medication from her kit, raising her head, wrapping her in blankets. She rebuilt the fire, feeding it until warmth slowly returned to the room. Outside, the storm screamed, but inside, Bianca focused on keeping Eve alive. Hours passed slowly. Eve drifted in and out, her breathing rough, her pulse weak. Bianca stayed with her, talking constantly, holding her hand, refusing to let her slip away. She checked on the horses when she could, bringing them into the small barn, rubbing them down, giving them hay. The mare watched the house, ears forward, waiting. Just before dawn, the storm began to weaken. The wind slowed, the snow eased. Bianca's phone buzzed weakly with a single bar of signal. She called for help with shaking hands. They waited. Bianca kept the fire going, kept Eve warm, kept her talking. When the helicopter finally arrived hours later, Bianca felt her strength give out. The medics took over, calm and sure. One of them looked at Bianca and nodded. You saved her life. Eve squeezed Bianca's hand before they carried her away. Take care of her, she whispered, meaning the horse. I will, Bianca said. The ride home was slow and painful. Both horses were exhausted, but they made it. Bianca cared for them with gentle hands, gratitude filling her chest. Days later, Bianca visited Eve in the hospital. Eve would recover. It would take time, but she would live. When Eve came home weeks later, the reunion between her and the mare left Bianca in tears. The horse pressed her head into Eve's chest, safe at last. From that night on, nothing stayed the same. Bianca and Eve checked on each other every day. They shared work, shared meals, shared stories. The loneliness that had weighed on both of them began to lift. Two ranches that once stood apart became connected. all because a brave horse ran through a deadly storm and refused to give up. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm after the storm, but it was not the same life Bianca had known before. Something had shifted deep inside her. The silence of the ranch no longer felt empty. It felt shared, even when Eve was miles away. Eve's recovery was slow but steady. Surgery repaired her heart, and every week she grew stronger. Bianca drove to town often, bringing news from the ranch and long stories about the horses. Eve always asked about her mare first, every single time. "She waits for you," Bianca would say. "Every morning, she looks north like she knows you're coming back." When Eve finally returned home, still moving carefully, Bianca helped her settle in. The mare stood at the fence, calling out the moment the truck appeared. When Eve stepped out, the horse walked straight to her, lowering her head into Eve's arms. Woman and horse stood there a long time, holding on to each other like survivors of the same battle. From that day on, Bianca and Eve stopped pretending they did not need anyone. They checked on each other every morning. A short call, just a voice saying, "I'm okay." They shared tools, shared work, shared worry when storms rolled in. If Bianca had to ride fence far out, Eve knew where she was. If Eve felt weak or unsure, Bianca was there. The ranches became quieter in a better way, not lonely, peaceful. The two horses who had carried them through the storm grew close. The chestnut mare and Maverick often stood side by side, heads low, calm, and steady. Watching them, Bianca felt something she had not felt since before Lloyd died: hope. Months later, standing at the fence line between their properties, Eve spoke softly. "We should breed them." Bianca smiled. "I was thinking the same thing." The foal was born the following spring. Strong, bright-eyed chestnut like his mother, solid like his father. They named him Storm, a reminder of the night that changed everything. Storm grew fast, watched over by two women who had learned that strength did not mean standing alone. In time, Bianca and Eve officially joined their ranches. They hired help. They planned for the future together. The work was still hard, but it no longer felt heavy. On the anniversary of the storm, they stood at the pasture fence as the sun set behind the mountains. The horses grazed nearby, peaceful and strong. "All because of her," Eve said, nodding toward the mare.
"And because you were brave enough to ask for help," Bianca replied.
The wind moved gently through the grass. No storm, no fear. Just two women, three horses, and a life rebuilt from courage, trust, and one desperate ride through the dark.